Okay guys, welcome to this long-term review of the 690 Duke R A2 version. I've had this bike for about a year now and I've done about 7,000 Ks. So I wanted to make this video because online there's a lot of test rides and reviews of the 690 Duke R, but there's not much long-term reviews of this bike. So I wanted for those people who had this bike on their list to see my opinion on my long term of ownership of this bike. As every bike, there are bad things and good things about the bike. So in this video I'll start with the bad things about this bike. This bike has an overheating issue, like every other Duke. The problem is that the fan on this bike kicks in too late. The fan starts to cool down the engine when it's really hot, like 8 out of 8 bars, as you can see on the display here. Here's the heat of the bike. So that is a problem. It happens when you are driving in traffic at very low speeds, when you are stopping going all the time, like riding in the city between traffic lights in the rush hour. Then it's where the problem kicks in. But it has to be said that my bike has a coolant which is made for colder environments. And this summer in Norway, where I live in Oslo, Norway, there have been a really hot summer. Normally there's like 20 degrees, and this year it has been almost 30 degrees every day. So that's maybe why it overheats, because the coolant isn't made for those kind of hot environments. Another problem is the smoothness of the bike. And one single cylinder motorcycles, they are known for being not as smooth as multi-cylinder motorcycles. But this bike is actually pretty smooth to be a single, because in 2016 KTM upgraded the engine. They made it smoother, more powerful, and less vibration as well. So this bike feels like a twin when you're riding it. It's really smooth for a single, but there is a lumpiness at 3000 RPM. I can show you now. If the bike goes lower than 3000 RPM, it starts to shake, as you see now. If I go under 30 kilometers per hour on this bike, it starts to shake. And therefore you have to always stay in low gears, because you have to have the RPMs above 3000 RPMs. And because of the lumpiness, therefore there is a high gearing on this bike. And because of the lumpiness, it's not that great to ride in town, because you have to work with the clutch a lot. If you are under 20, I would say 40 k's an hour, 40 kilometers an hour, it's not that great, because you have to work with the clutch. But there is a solution on this problem. You can go down one tooth on the front sprocket, and that will help a lot. That will smooth out the lumpiness. And single motorcycles are also known for vibrating a lot. As I said earlier, KTM, they smoothed out the vibration during the making of the 2016 version of the 690 Duke. So it's much better than the last model, which was produced until 2015. you can't nearly feel the vibration when riding, like cruising. When you're in highest gear possible and just cruising, you can't almost feel the vibration actually. But when you're riding in a lower gear that you should drive in, you feel the vibration, and when accelerating hard. Like now I'm in first gear, now I feel the vibration because I should be in second. And now I nearly don't feel the vibration anymore. And this motorcycle is a naked bike, so of course you will feel the wind, as every other naked bike. This bike works actually really fine up till 110 kilometers per hour. Then you really start to feel the wind. Because you sit pretty high on this bike, and because of that high seat height, you get a lot of wind on your helmet and your chest. So when riding fast on the highway, you get a lot of wind on your chest and the helmet, and you get a lot of turbulence at your helmet as well, which makes your head wobble around, and it's really uncomfortable when riding fast. So if you're just going to drive the bike on the highway, the Duke is maybe not the best bike for that, but it's really great in town and on country roads. Then the wind is no problem. And so the gearbox, it works really fine when changing with the clutch, as you normally should actually. But many people and myself like to clutchless upshift. Like you just go off the throttle and shift gears without using the clutch. On this bike you have to be really good at clutchless upshifting if you want to do that on this bike, because if you're not precise on the on-off throttle when shifting, it can go into false neutrals between the gears. So you have to be really precise. If not, it will go into false neutrals. Fucking cyclists. The next problem is the fuel gauge. As you see on the screen here, the bike has the fuel gauge right here. And the fuel gauge isn't always correct. For example, for some weeks ago, the bike said I had 6 out of 8 bars. When I filled up the bike with 6 out of 8 stripes or bars, I filled up 7 liters, and that is the half of the tank when it showed 6 out of 8 bars. So it's not correct, the fuel gauge. It maybe has to do with my exhaust, because I haven't tuned the exhaust, and therefore it maybe shows the wrong amount of fuel, and so on. Another problem was the stock seat. The stock seat was hard, or not very hard, but kind of hard, and it was pretty uncomfortable when riding long distance. Therefore I bought the KTM powerparts seat, which is much better, and yeah, I'll suggest that for every Duke rider to get the powerparts seat. It's much better. It starts to be painful after like 3 to 5 hours when riding the stock seat. This bike has orange rims, and therefore when the chain lube spits on the rims, it gets really blacked out. So it gets dirty. No, it doesn't get more dirty, but it looks more dirty because it's an orange rim. So you have to clean the rims often to make it look clean. So just make sure of that. If you want to clean rims all the time, you have to clean this bike a lot, like every week. And I think it's a pain in the ass to clean those rims. So my next bike I will not choose this color. It looks amazing when it's clean, but it gets really dirty. And so to the good things about the bike. There are more good things to this bike than bad things. So Here's my opinions on the good things. I think the bike setup is amazing. It only weighs 147 kilograms dry, so it's really lightweight, and that makes the bike really flickable, and that makes it a lot of fun when riding in where I am right now. And the lightness of the bike makes the power to weight ratio amazing, because this bike has a lot of torque. It pulls this lightweight bike really fast. And so on to the brakes. The brakes on this bike are freaking phenomenal. It's a Brembo M50, which is the top class Brembo brake, and the stopping power is unreal. It stops so fucking fast. It's almost overkill for this bike. And it's only one caliper. It's no brake disco caliper on the right side, it's only on the left side, and it's more than enough. It stops really fast. And this bike has a lot of torque. It has 74 Newton meters, which is a lot for a single cylinder 690 cc. As you saw there, it has a lot of torque. The torque is in the low RPMs and in the mid-range. There's not torque on the high end of the rev range. So the torque is instant. I mean, like, as you twist the throttle, it flies. Just look here. It flies. And this is an A2 restricted motorcycle. So it has 44 horsepower instead of the full effect, which is 75. The torque will be the same if it has an A2 restriction kit, and therefore the torque pulls those 44 horsepower much faster than, for example, a CB F500, which has 48 horsepower, but maybe 14 or 15 Newton meters of torque. Because of the torque of this bike, it pulls really hard as an A2 bike. So if you're looking into getting an A2 bike, get a bike with a lot of torque. And so on to the acceleration. This bike does 0 to 100 in 3.8 seconds, which is actually really fast for a single motor. As an A2, I've seen people done 4.3 seconds, 0 to 100. The bike pulls really hard in first gear. I don't go full throttle in first gear, it's way too dangerous. It power wheels and it's just scary. And second and third, it pulls really hard as well. And so on to the electronics. The electronics on this bike are amazing. As you see in front of me, there's a TFT display on the Duke R, which is phenomenal. The bike has riding modes, which is really great. It changes the response in throttle from the different modes. So now I'm in sport mode, which has the most responsive throttle, so it's instant throttle. If I change it to street mode, which I change it to now, it's more slack in the throttle. For town riding, I'll suggest using the street mode, because when riding in low speeds and roundabouts and in traffic lights, it gets kind of jerky in the sport mode. And the bike also has rain mode, and this bike has a lot of safety as well. It has ABS, of course, and it has traction control, it has motor slip regulation and cornering ABS as well. What I like about the electronics is that they don't kick in very fast. They kick in when there is an emergency situation. So you don't really feel the electronics. You feel the rawness of the bike, and it feels extreme until it's emergency situation, like maximum braking, then you feel the ABS kick in. And even the real wheel lifts with the ABS on, so when you're braking really hard. And the traction control and the ABS is adjustable, and so on to the cornering ABS. With the cornering ABS, you can actually brake while cornering without changing the direction of the bike. So you can maximum brake while steering the bike. And with normal ABS, you can brake in the corner, but you can't steer the bike when braking hard. It will just stay in a straight line. And so on to the MSR. The MSR stands for motor slip regulation, and that with the slipper clutch makes that you can downshift really hard on this bike without getting without the rear wheel slipping off. And so the suspension of this bike is great. It has WP adjustable forks in the front and WP adjustable rear shock. This suspension is made for the track, so you can track this bike with great suspension. I haven't messed with the adjustability of the forks and shocks, but it's really easy. You can just click under here, you just turn. It's really easy to adjust in the front. And if you want, you can have really stiff suspension, so you can ride really fast on the roads and feel stability in the corners, and feel that the bike is planted on the road and it's not bouncy. So for fast riding, the suspension is great. And if you want a more bouncy suspension, a more comfortable ride, then you can soften up the suspension by adjusting it. So suspension is very, very good. And so to the riding position. The KTM has an upright riding position. Because it's a naked bike, it has flat bars, and therefore it's really comfortable because you don't lean much over. You sit pretty much upright. So we can do long distance riding on this bike, as long as you're riding on country roads and not on the highway. The seat height is pretty high for this bike. So if you are 180 centimeters high, there should be no problem flat footing this bike. The seat height makes you sit high, so you can easily see over cars, which is great in traffic when lane splitting. And as I said earlier, the bike has a lot of torque, and that the torque is in the low RPM and the mid-range, as I also said, makes the bike really easy to ride. And a lot of fun as well, because you just twist throttle and the bike goes. You don't have to work with the revs, and therefore it's really easy to ride fast. You can just stay in whatever gear you want and just twist the throttle and it goes. So you can definitely start on this bike. You really can. I have an 8-tour restriction on this bike because of the lame motorcycle licenses in Norway. I'm not able to ride bikes with more than 48 horsepower. So with the restriction kit you can definitely start on this bike. But be very careful in first gear especially, because if you twist the throttle hard in first gear it will power wheelie, and it's really fucking fast. I'm just saying, it's fast. Be gentle in first gear. And so on to the sound. The bike sounds phenomenal with the Leo Vinci decat, because the Aquapovich comes stock on this bike. But there is still a catalysator there then. So you really have to change the catalysator to the link pipe, which Fresco makes, and Leo Vinci. I bought the Leo Vinci. When removing the DB killer and putting the Leo Vinci on, it sounds amazing. I can stop someplace here and rev the shit off the bike for you guys. Here we go. It's actually very loud, so you have to wear earplugs on this bike. It's painful without earplugs. It has that kind of wrapping sound as most super motards and V-twins and twins has. So it's really fun to wrap around in the city, just like that. And the bike has that kind of hooligan feel to it. When you get on this bike, you feel like a badass. You just wanna go really, really fast and twist the throttle all the time and just fuck around. And that's you get a really good feeling actually riding this bike. It has a lot of character. So when riding in the city and when pulling up on bike meets, you get a lot of attention. And also because of the looks, because this bike looks different. It has those orange colors which separate the bike from other bikes like the Japanese bikes. It has just this unique look to it. It looks it has this killer look. It looks just badass. And that's what I really like about this bike. It looks just amazing, I think, especially with the parts I put it on, and with the bar ends and the seat and the Pillion seat cover, and the Acra of course was stock on the bike, so that's great. And yeah, just the overall look of the bike is amazing. This was my long-term review of the 690 Duke R A2 2017 model. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any more questions about my bike, just ask in the comments. And subscribe as well, and click on the like button too. And then I hope you like this video. Goodbye.